So you'd think a data center's biggest problem is finding enough computer chips. That's the story everyone tells. Sounds pretty obvious. It isn't the real bottleneck anymore. Here's the part almost nobody understands about this business right now. The hardest thing to buy in the AI industry today is not a chip. It is a guaranteed supply of electricity. Most people think a data center sells computing power. It doesn't. Not really, not anymore. What it actually needs to secure first is a steady, dedicated flow of electricity, 24 hours a day, for decades. This single idea explains one of the strangest business decisions of the last 2 years. You will see the cost and the shortage behind it. You will also see the moment a company restarted a nuclear plant most Americans assumed would never run again. This is not really a story about servers. It is a story about what happens when demand outgrows the power grid itself. The billion-dollar building. Building a modern hyperscale data center is staggeringly expensive on its own. A single large facility can cost well over $1 billion to construct. Servers, cooling systems, and backup generators all add to that number fast. A large campus can require millions of gallons of water a day just for cooling. None of that spending guarantees a facility can actually turn on at full capacity. A finished building still needs a hookup to the electric grid. That hookup is no longer something companies can simply order and receive quickly. Land, permits, and construction used to be the hard part of this business. Now those steps are often the easy part by comparison. The real shortage nobody saw coming. Here's the part that sounds backwards until you think it through. Electricity demand from data centers is expected to roughly double before the end of the decade. Grid connection queues across the country now stretch past 2,000 gigawatts of requested projects. A new power plant can take 5 to 7 years just to get approved and connected. Analysts have projected a shortfall of nearly 50 gigawatts of generation capacity within just a few years. That gap is roughly equal to losing dozens of large power plants overnight. Tech companies committed more than $400 billion in a single recent year toward this build-out. Money was never really the constraint. Physical electrons on a physical grid were. You cannot rush a transformer into existence. You cannot skip the line for a new gas turbine. Solar and wind are cheaper and faster to build, but they only generate power part of the time. AI data centers need power around the clock, every single day of the year. That single requirement pushes many companies straight toward nuclear energy instead. Global spending on grid infrastructure alone is expected to approach $550 billion this year. Even that enormous number may not close the gap fast enough. The trap of waiting your turn. Here's the trap hiding underneath this entire race. A company that waits patiently in a standard grid interconnection queue may wait 5 years or more. Competitors who lock in power today can start building immediately. An AI company without confirmed electricity cannot train new models at scale. It cannot expand, no matter how much cash sits in the bank. The bottleneck stopped being computing chips and quietly became raw megawatts. Whoever secures guaranteed power first quietly buys years of competitive advantage. Being early to a power contract now matters more than being early to a chip order. The reactor nobody expected to run again. Meet 3 Mile Island. Most Americans know the name from 1979, when Unit 2 at the plant suffered a partial meltdown. A valve failure and instrument errors led operators to misread what the reactor was doing. Small amounts of radiation were released, though regulators found no measurable harm to workers or the public. It remains the most serious nuclear accident in United States history. The incident permanently changed how the public viewed nuclear power for a generation. Here's the detail almost nobody remembers. A separate reactor at the same site, Unit 1, kept running safely for decades afterward. It shut down in 2019, not for safety reasons, but because it could no longer compete on price. In 2024, Constellation Energy announced something unprecedented. It would spend over $1.5 billion to restart that very unit. A $1 billion federal loan helped make the project possible. Microsoft signed a 20-year agreement to buy the electricity it produces. The price is reportedly well above typical wholesale electricity rates. Microsoft is paying a premium specifically for power that runs reliably day and night without interruption. The reactor is being renamed the Crane Clean Energy Center. It is expected to return to service around 2027 or 2028, pending federal approval. The project is projected to add well over $10 billion to the state economy. It is also expected to bring back hundreds of permanent jobs to the local area. The output, roughly 835 megawatts, is enough to power hundreds of thousands of homes. The power does not run through a private line straight into one building. It flows into the regional grid that Microsoft's data centers already draw from nearby. Still, the symbolism is hard to miss. The most infamous nuclear site in American history is coming back online specifically because artificial intelligence needs electricity that badly. Investors reacted almost instantly. Constellation stock jumped more than 20% within a single trading day of the announcement. Amazon and Google have signed comparable nuclear power agreements of their own since then. The pattern is no longer an isolated deal. It has become the new standard playbook for the entire industry. The deals that skip the line entirely. Some companies are going even further than a purchase agreement. A few are building data centers that connect directly to a power plant, bypassing the public grid altogether. This approach is sometimes called going behind the meter. It avoids a years-long wait for a standard grid connection entirely. It also raises a harder question. When a data center claims a power plant's entire output for itself, that electricity is gone for everyone else nearby. Local residents and businesses can end up competing with a single data center for the same limited supply. Regulators are only beginning to grapple with what that trade-off really means for everyone else on the grid. The real odds of building one. In the optimistic scenario, a company locks in a dedicated power source years ahead of its rivals. Its data centers run at full capacity while competitors sit in a 5-year connection queue. In the realistic scenario, a company waits for the standard grid process to catch up on its own. By the time power arrives, the competitive window may already be closing. Microsoft didn't restart a nuclear reactor because it wanted to make a statement. It restarted one because the alternative was standing still. Every hyperscale company on Earth is now racing to answer the exact same question. Where does the next decade of electricity actually come from? The chip shortage made headlines for years. The electricity shortage is quietly the bigger story now.